right. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. So welcome to those of you in the room, as well as to those of you who are watching us online. We are preparing a briefing for you with regards to the upcoming grids package, which is hopefully still scheduled to be released tomorrow on the 10th of December. Saying hopefully because, as you all know, this package has already been postponed once this year. So we keep our hopes high that we will get to see it in 2025 because, of course, it's long overdue. To many in this space, to many working on this topic, such as my distinguished panelists, this is a long overdue package. However, this won't be the first time that grids actually come to the forefront of the EU discussions in 2025. In fact, in June this year, the European Parliament has adopted, with a large majority, an own initiative report on grids. In this report, it called for more innovation in grids, for increased deployment of grid-enhancing technologies, and for a coordinated pan-European approach to electricity system planning. Also that same month, in June 2025, the European Commission put forward a document to guide anticipatory investments in future fit grids. Today, we're going to find out from our panelists what those future fit grids need to look like. So, how did the topic of grids move from niche to now being one of the most talked about in the EU? Why did we call this press briefing the grids package as the most consequential puzzle piece of the clean industrial deal? So these are the questions that we will look at. And just before we start with that, I think it shouldn't really surprise us that grids are becoming such a big topic. In fact, already during the EU Green Deal Commission, we've seen that electrification emerged as the main driver of transformation for the EU on its way to reaching a carbon neutral economy by 2050. And so this direction of transformation through electrification was reconfirmed in the Clean Industrial Deal. But obviously this time with a focus and a recognition that our competitiveness relies on there being increased electrification as well as abundant and affordable clean energy across Europe. So I would like to introduce my distinguished panelists. I will start by introducing Layla Sawyer, who's the Secretary General of Current, the voice of innovative grid technologies here in Brussels. Next to her is Mark Newton, who's the VP Europe for Smart Wires. He is also the chair of Current. And next to Layla is also Kjaer, who is the Executive Director of SuperGrid Europe, a recently launched think tank working on grids. Okay, so Layla, I will start with you. Are the mics working here? Great. Okay. I don't really hear it, but I believe it. So, yeah, it's important to use mics also for those online. Layla, would you tell us a little bit what makes the grids package possibly the most consequential piece of the Clean Industrial Deal, and how do you see currently the main hurdles affecting Europe's grids at the moment?
Thanks, Susanna. Yeah, having an association called Current reduces your vocabulary. Saying currently, current measures, reduces the things you can say. So, thanks. So why is this for us, why is this the most important puzzle piece of the Clean Industrial Deal? That's because right now we're trying to do two things, which is decarbonize and for Europe to remain competitive. And to remain competitive, we need to bring down electricity prices, we need to increase our renewable energy, reduce curtailment, and give industry the opportunity to electrify. And industry won't stay in Europe if they can't get an increased grids connection for 10 years, right? So this is absolutely crucial for European industry. At the same time, for decarbonization, if we want to meet our climate targets by 2050, that means we'll actually need to decarbonize the power system before 2040. And in the life of a power system, of an electricity system, 15 years is an extremely short time frame. So why is the grids package the most crucial puzzle piece. A large part of that is timing, because if we don't get this right now, 5 years from now, if we want another chance, it's going to be really hard to make up for this lost 5 years. And then in addition to timing, it's also about the pace, right? It's not just some small improvements or streamlining or going a little bit faster. We need to go, depending on which reports you read, by 3 and 20 times as fast as we're going now. So it's not some slight improvements, it's really a monumental change in pace in building out grid capacity. And on top of that, there's other challenges. We need to, we have aging infrastructure. We need to be upgrading a lot of our infrastructure. We're losing billions in curtailment. We can bring down system costs, but also increase the resilience of the power system by deploying new technologies. And then in terms of cost, just yesterday, actually, Wind Europe came out with a study saying that business as usual will just simply cost a lot more to Europeans, and not by 2050, already in the next 10 years. So that was just yesterday.
Okay, so when the grid package comes out tomorrow, what will be the main element that you, as Current, will be looking for in the package? So what will be, let's say, the main criteria by which you will judge whether this is overall a good package or, well, not a good package in terms of promoting deployment of innovative grid technologies on the scale required that you've just referred to?
So for this to deliver what we need, so this massive increase in the pace, we need a recognition and a commitment that innovation and innovative technologies are a key part of the strategy, in addition to things like permitting and cost sharing. That's great, but if innovation is not a key part of the strategy and new technologies that can increase the capacity of the existing grid and deliver new grids with much higher capacity, it's going to be very challenging for us to meet those goals. So just looking, for example, back at the competitiveness compass, a quote from that, it says, the EU has fallen behind the US in advanced technologies, and China has caught up in many sectors. And the root cause is a lack of innovation, and Europe is failing to translate its ideas into new marketable technologies. So that's from the competitiveness compass earlier this year. So for the grids package, we can't have that we don't bring innovation into it. And part of that innovation means monitoring the progress we're making towards a fully decarbonized system. Are we reducing curtailment? Are we delivering grids at the speed we are? Are we actually on track to meet our goals? And that also means including even the possibility for innovation in some of our scenarios. Because if we look at the scenarios that are created now, we assume that the only technology we're going to have is the technology of today, and that's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if we don't start planning for it, then it's going to be very difficult to get the buy-in for projects with new kinds of transmission technologies. Then we also need to embed efficiency into the planning, which means, optimizing our electricity grids, getting the most out of it, and before reinforcing it and before building out new grids. Not to slow down the process, but to do that in parallel, the parts where we can't build out yet to then optimize there. So very complementary.
Okay, thanks a lot. Now, since we have a bit of extra time because one of our speakers unfortunately could not make it to Brussels today, I have only one more follow-up question for you, Layla, and I will, at some point, of course, everyone in the room will get to ask questions. So I recall reading a study by Current with Compass Lexicon, I believe, a study that was also quoted in the Draghi report, and I understand that numbers of the study were also present in some of the leaked documents from last week. Would you mind sharing with all of us what those numbers said, especially with regards to 2030, our immediate time horizon?
Yeah, so what we said is with the annual steady deployment of innovative grid technologies, that this could increase grid capacity by 20 to 40% by 2040. And this is not all at 2040, but just gradually over time, increasing more and more the grid capacity. And it's not only that it increases the grid capacity, but it gets us there sooner. So it would get us to the same level of grid development or same level of grid capacity 4 to 8 years faster. And then it could, by 2040, reduce 700 billion in conventional expansion costs.
Great, thank you so much. Mark, over to you. You are here as Vice President Europe for Smart Wires. I was wondering if you could tell us, what does your company produce, and what is a power flow control device? And why is this important for Europeans? Why do we need to have more of this technology deployed in Europe?
Thank you, Susanna. Yes, so I come from Smart Wires. We offer a variant of power flow control devices. A power flow control device is a device that's installed in the network, and it changes the impedance or resistance of the line, so it changes its characteristics, a circuit, and allows you to increase or decrease the amount of power that's flowing through that line or the surrounding area. We offer an advanced form of that. Power flow control has been around for many, many years, many decades in actual fact, but recent advantages in power electronics have allowed us to provide devices that are much more rapid to build, that are very modular in their design, and that allows deployments in 1 to 2 years. Now, if we compare that to a traditional transmission line, which from the international energy agencies, the IEA's report would say around 13 years, but in practice, as we can see in Europe, it can take decades to deliver. These technologies can be deployed in 1 to 2 years, so a fraction of the time. And they're highly modular in their nature, so you install what you need now, and you can build it over the course of time. You can resize, you can rescale, and through the power electronics that are at their core, it allows them to act and be very, very rapid in their response, providing a wide range of services. So they can do, they control the power for markets, but also to respond to emergencies, to make the network much more resilient, to make it much more able to deal with some of the modern challenges that are coming through as we go through to a decarbonized network.
And could you tell us a little bit about the cost of non-deploying this technology? So cost of non-deployment, as well as just also cost of curtailment, and just to give us a bit of an understanding as to which numbers you're looking at when you're assessing the benefits that this technology could enable for Europe.
Absolutely. I mean, the costs are already eye-watering, and they're going to become staggering. So, I mean, if we look at 2023, ACER, the Association for Regulators in Europe, they would have looked at congestion costs across Europe about 4.2 billion per annum, and that's painful. But when we project that out and looking at the European Commission's own figures or their analytics, the JRC, they're looking at by 2030, around 26 billion, rising to anything up to 103 billion per annum by 2040. So staggering figures, vast growth, and if we were to deploy the technologies, as I say, in a 1 to 2 year time frame, if we were to look at something like the 600 billion that's being projected for network reinforcement, and using some of the figures that Layla has already mentioned from the Compass Lexicon report, that 20 to 40% reduction in network build, and being quite conservative about it, we could see a cost reduction of 240 billion euros before 2030, which is astonishing. But also, it would be avoiding a lot of those far, far greater costs that come from the congestion saving alone. I mean, you can see that 4.2 billion per annum racks up pretty quick on top of the saving and cost in having to build new network reinforcement to try and support that. The one thing I will mention as well is that all of these figures, the ones that are projecting sort of 2030 and 2040, they assume that we're going to build a third more network than we have today. Now, as Layla's already mentioned, we're struggling at the moment. We can see the delays and the increase in time it takes to build infrastructure. When you're looking at increasing that by somewhere between 3 and 20 times, that is a massive undertaking. We don't know where we're going to get the resources. We don't know where we're going to get the supplies. We don't know where we're going to be able to fuel that through all of the support measures, whether it be planning or whether it be government agencies. So something that's light and quick and easy to build and can be built now is going to be hugely important for the future.
So what would make you celebrate when you see tomorrow's proposal in the grids package? So what would be an element that you and your colleagues would be thrilled to see in there?
I think really at the core is we would really welcome seeing the fact that innovative grid technologies, our own technology included, would actually be considered first when you're looking at network issues. As I say, they avoid a lot of the difficulties and the lead time and actually building and costs for building something that's bigger. In addition to this, and something that's often overlooked, is that the technologies can support new conventional investments. So if you're building new lines or cables and you install the equipment at the same time, you'll get much, much more out of it if you combine it with these technologies going at the same time. So there's an opportunity for a very great value add there for minimal to virtually negligible costs when we're looking at some of these very, very expensive infrastructure investments.
So basically, if I were to summarize, I think after listening to you and Layla, you would both be looking for some sort of an innovation-first principle to be driving the grids package tomorrow. And probably in the absence of that, you will consider the package to be perhaps just a gradual proposition as to what's in place. I'm taking that from...
Yeah, we can't afford to just go incrementally and improve a little bit. It needs to be bold.
Excellent. Okay. Mark, thank you very much. I would like to also apologize in case I've introduced you as Mark Newton at the start. Your name is actually Mark Norton, and with this occasion, the new journalist who's joined us will get to hear your name. It goes to say how I think of you in terms of also your explanations on how grids work. So may I just encourage all of you in the room to think of Mark as the person you would also reach out to for explanations on how grids work, how the electric current moves. And so in that sense, I think it was a beneficial mistake. So thanks for accepting my apologies. Christian, over to you. You are the executive director of a newly launched think tank. And I would like to invite you to share with us the unique perspective that your organization brings to the forefront of this debate on grids.
Yeah, thanks, Suzanne. Thank you, Suzanne. Is this on? I think so. My name is Christian Kjaer, Suzanne said, and I work for SuperGrid Europe. It's a think tank which was started by an organization called Trifecta, and the think tank was established by the family of Eddie O'Connor, who wrote a book called SuperGrid, Super Solution, together with an editor from the Irish Times. He was a developer of solar and wind, and 20 years ago he established that we need some sort of grid if we are to base our energy supply on variable renewables. He passed away last year, but the book was updated last year by his daughter, and she also established a think tank to take some of those ideas that it has taken him 25 years to develop and which he put into this book. So from our perspective, the grids package we see it as recognition that this presumption that the grids will be there, those days are over. And I think that's the real opportunity we have here. For more than 3 decades, we have taken grids for granted, and what this package should do is, what it does is it recognizes that this is the lack of an adequate fit-for-purpose grid is the biggest stumbling block for Europe to secure its own energy. So for us, it's a major opportunity, and we're looking at decarbonizing our energy and doing it at the same time where the Council and the European Parliament has just agreed that it's not going to be based on fossil fuels, including gas from Russia. So what will it be based on? It has to be based on, to a large extent, variable renewables, solar and wind, and we need a big highway to connect those two and get the power from where it's produced cheapest to the consumers. So that's the idea about the SuperGrid, and it requires a lot of things, including that we start developing all of those technology, including marks, that are readily available. We're not using, our grids are strained, we're wasting energy every day, we're throwing away billions because we have short-term solutions to it, which is innovative grid technologies, and we can apply them within half a year while we plan for those big grid upgrades that are definitely needed. So innovation, absolutely, we need to start using those 21st century technologies instead of the 20th century grid technologies we're using today. What we are very, very concerned about also, well, for this to happen, we have 15 years, and we won't be able to do it with the current governance structure. So from SuperGrid Europe's perspective, we hope that there's a lot of changes in the way grids are planned and the governance of them. So today, those that are planning the grids are really doing it as we've always done. It's work. The lights are almost always on. We can't do that anymore. We can't increment our way to decarbonize energy independence. So at the moment, grid planning in Europe is a wish list. It's basically transmission system operators who will get funding for large cross-border infrastructure. If their project is put on what's called a project of common interest, they send a wish list for the next 10 years of investments to their organization in Brussels, and they put together that wish list, and that becomes the grid plan in Europe. That's what we've done. That's what's called the 10-year network development plan. That's what you will see in the 10E regulation that'll come out tomorrow, a revision of that 10E regulation. And that's the one that delivers incremental approaches, or has so far. We would like to see some major changes in the governance within that. Just one second. So in the United States, you have independent system operators. There's one called MISO. It delivers $5 billion in savings for consumers every year. The UK has just moved towards an independent system operator. We would like to see something similar in the package going forward. So that governance piece is extremely important for us if we are to create a fit-for-purpose grid that will deliver decarbonization and energy independence.
Great. You've answered my question. That's exactly what I wanted to ask you. What are the concrete things and measures that you'd like to see? So I would now like to open it up to the Q&A from the public, and also asking my colleague Paul to keep an eye on whether there are questions online. There are a couple of people following us online. But first, let's start with questions in the room, I would say.
James from Politico. I guess this is probably for all of you, but maybe starting with you, Christian. Have you seen the leaked drafts, and what do you think of them? Do they have what you want?
On the weekend, all of us.
I have seen a leaked draft. I'll say I'll evaluate when the package is out, obviously, but what we will evaluate against will be what the EU Commissioner Jørgensen said last month. He said the European grids package will be a major step towards building a 21st century European supergrid, replacing bottlenecks with high-speed energy corridors, ensuring that energy can flow freely from wherever it is needed the most. That's what we're going to look at, and for that we do believe there has to be some governance change, and we have read Article 11 of those leaked draft as well, which may be what you're referring to in terms of the governance. And my hope is really that the Commission in its proposal remembers what the Council has asked for and what the European Parliament has also asked for in its resolution on calling for a coordinated pan-European approach to planning. There are elements of that in the leak, and from our perspective, we'll be reading what in that leak is Article 11 very, very closely in the 10-year regulation. This is about who does the scenario on which the plans are based on. So from that perspective, we'll have to see tomorrow what comes out of that.
Can I just sort of follow up on that in terms of the governance and who does the planning? Could you just, what is it that you want to see exactly?
I would like to see an independent entity, architects that put together a plan for if we're going to decarbonize and we don't have fossil fuels from Russia and we don't want to spend too much on importing LNG. How is a fit-for-purpose grid that fits those policy priorities? Well, how does that look like in 2040, in 2050? Someone has to plan that. Today, it's a wish list. It's a bottom-up approach. We do need some top-down thinking in order to plan this. So from our perspective, it could be an energy agency that does that as long as it's independent. It could be JRC, it could be the European Commission, but it has to happen fast because we only have 15 years to decarbonize. So from that perspective, we probably won't get an independent system operator proposed in the legislation, but at least we should put that discussion on the table. What we might get, and what is absolutely needed, is to have some change in the current way that we are governing these things. And what the Commission has proposed, as I understand it, not yet, is that the European Commission takes on some of the responsibility for doing the scenarios on which the plans are based. And that's a step. As you say, I'm not sure it's a final step towards the SuperGrid, but it's a step if it comes into the package tomorrow.
Allow me to build on that question and also ask Layla. You said you had a fun weekend reading the leaked grids package. Anything you'd like to share with us? What was your, what was, I don't know, the source of disappointment, or was there something beneficial that you saw in there that you would like to see carried through to the official proposal tomorrow?
So what was really strong in obviously we don't know what the final version will be, but is the recognition of considering non-wire solutions first and looking first what those can do. And they made a very strong attempt to really embed that into the process. So whenever you want to build a new infrastructure, whether it's in the project of common interest or national permitting, that you first look, is there another way that this specific infrastructure can be solved? And that rightfully will be a big cost saving for the system, right? If you can solve a problem using a non-wire alternative. What we didn't necessarily see is a recognition of innovation as an important part of the strategy. If you the scenario building, there's not really a recognition that there will be new transmission technologies that can be much more efficient, that can build a much bigger capacity grid without taking up the same space as other technologies. So that we didn't necessarily see in there. We see a lot of assumptions that we will be able to build hydrogen or other kinds of innovation, but we don't necessarily. We kind of get the impression that okay, we've innovated everything we can with the wires and cables, when we know that that's just not true. There's a lot of innovation happening on that front as well.
Okay, and Mark, how about yourself? Have you had a chance to look through the leak?
Yes, I have. I also had a fun weekend and delving through several hundred pages of documentation, and Of course, very welcome if what we have seen translates into what is, launched, and we hold reservation, obviously, on that. And so, it's great to see the non-wire solutions, particularly from, my companies and our perspective. It's a little strange in the fact that it's seen as an either-or and not necessarily, it's like you will do the non-wire solution first, and then you'll consider a conventional solution. We would like to see the fact that it's added to the conventional solutions as well. They are, as I say, a value add. But I suppose the other thing that was a little surprising, as well as when you delve into the detail, is that there's still this consideration that the first evaluation of these new projects is going to be looking somewhere in the 10 to 15 year into the future window. So a lot of it's set up like we can do nothing in the next 15 years. And that clearly isn't the case. I mean, as I've mentioned, a lot of these technologies can deliver next year. Not only can they deliver next year, they can continue to deliver. You can have 15 iterations of using these technologies between now and when the first assessment's going to come out. That is an enormous amount of improvement that can actually happen to the grid. There's an enormous amount of management of the uncertainty that we're seeing, and the uncertainty is growing every single year from support from these devices. And that to me is a missed opportunity if we don't have a chance to look at the near term and what we can actually do in that as part of this grids package and the way that it's going to be managed and governed going forward. As everyone's saying, the whole industry saying, it's not just the people at this table, we're behind where we need to be. We need network now. We're losing jobs. 2.5 million jobs are supposed to be delivered for the green transition by 2030. They are going to be lost if we don't have the grid to support it. Electricity is the heartblood of the entire economy. We're going to end up with innovation going elsewhere. We're going to end up with, we've already heard that the US and China are at our heels or going ahead. If we want to keep ourselves as a global position in the front, we need to do what we can, when we can, now. And for me, looking at something that's got such a forward-facing, 10 to 15 years, and then we'll look at what we can do then, doesn't make sense. We should be looking at what we can do tomorrow, preferably yesterday. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Any more questions? Yes, please, go ahead. The mic, Paul? Oh, voilà. Thank you.
Hi, Philip Bedosulin with the Norwegian Media Energi og Klima. You're pointing towards massive financing needs, but do you have a sort of idea of where the financing should be, and especially then in the short term, how much should be proposed?
Mark, do you want to answer that first?
Yes, it may have been buried in some of the response we gave, but one of the things that's come out, and ACER have put this in the monitoring report. They've made the statement that these innovative grid technologies that we're discussing, or grid enhancing technology, if you will, they can do the same job looking out to the sort of 2030, 2040 window, providing 20 or 40% of the capacity for 35% less in cost, and that's capital cost. But if we look at the payback period for some of these investments, it's often in the order of weeks. And you can find a number of cost-benefit analysis online. So you can often have these devices installed and paid back just through the savings and congestion costs within the year of the saving you're getting. So when you're looking at the financing, you're going to be asking somebody to either pay in their bill for building a project that resolves the problem, or I'm going to pay to perpetuate a problem for a number of years into the future until I can get a more elaborate, costly solution in place. So when I look at the financing, it can actually be a negative financing impact when you look at it over a year, and certainly over 5 or 10 years period. So capital cost much lower, but the actual real cost, the cost to the consumer when they're having to actually wait for these investments to be delivered, it can actually be negative.
Layla, what is current position on the different financing instruments that could be used going forward to support the deployment of innovative grid technologies?
Yeah, so I think the figure that the Commission uses is 1.2 trillion euros, and I think that's only electricity infrastructure, not any other kind of infrastructure needs. Well, for us, it can never be, that cannot be the end goal. Okay, how can we spend 1.2 trillion, but how can we bring that down? And we know that for grid operators, and I'm sure the capex bias, building a big capex project is going to give a higher return on investment than smaller, lower cost digital solutions. So we think there are, at national level, incentives needed to deploy these technologies. There are different ways of doing that. The one that we like is benefit sharing. So if you deploy a technology and it and you deploy a lower cost solution instead of building a new line, that you as a grid operator could keep a percentage of the difference. So that's kind of incentivizing measures of cost sharing. So that is one way to do it. Another thing that we've been looking at, and I think the clean energy investment strategy has been postponed. I'm not sure exactly when that's going to come out now, but what are the other innovative financing models that you can to give extra support to these technologies? And there are different ways of doing that as well. That could be a kind of a guarantee, a performance guarantee, something that if a grid operator is worried, or there is a perceived risk to deploy these technologies, that you could get a kind of a guarantee, and that you could also, if then the technology does perform as expected, that you could then keep reinvesting that guarantee into innovative technologies and to keep that going, because it's just not happening organically. So there does need to be extra support, and then specific for innovative grid technologies, which are just not remunerated the same way under the national legislations for big infrastructure projects.
Great, thank you so much. Christian, is there anything you'd like to share on the financing question?
Maybe just an example. So the German TSO TenneT, they built, as one of the first projects they built in this energy transition, was a 60-kilometer AC line, quite small. It cost $1 billion to build it. The first year, it returned 500 million in benefits. So it's paid back in 2 years. So it's just to say, the business case is there, the benefits for the consumers are there, but they're not necessarily reflected in how you obtain financing. It took 20 years from they got the idea to build it until it was built. 17 of those years were planning. So we expect a lot of measures to improve those planning elements of the package. I'll say that the European Commission, this is another initiative, but they have proposed a 5-fold increase in funding for electricity, cross-border electricity infrastructure under the Connecting Europe facility. So the way that links to the proposal tomorrow is that currently the planning is come with your project, we put it into the 10-year network development plan, you'll get CEF funding, and then you go. And what we would like to see is that it's not only for new power lines, the CEF funding, but that it's also made available to the non-wire solutions. So although the Commission has proposed a 5-fold increase in funding, which is very welcome, what you'll see tomorrow is that continue to be only a new grid option for funding, or can we include some of those innovative technologies for CEF funding that can be applied tomorrow as well? And I very much agree with Mark. It should not be an either or, it should be both.
Great, thank you very much. Happy to take more questions if there are any. Okay.
Thank you. Andreas Wallstad, freelance. Just briefly. Hello, Andreas Wallstad, freelance. Just briefly on the risk of cyber attacks and sabotage, do you think this issue is being given enough attention at the moment during the planning? Thank you.
Volunteers for the question, Layla?
Give it to Mark.
To Mark.
Yes, from what we've seen, I think that it is being given a high level of recognition that it is a risk and needs to be managed. And I do think that there is a lot of work that's being done in that space to make sure that not only, which I would say it's a very low risk position that we're in at the moment, particularly the way the networks are being planned and designed and the people who are responsible for maintaining and operating those. But I think the way that the plan is being put in place is supporting a continued recognition of the issue and management of that going forward. So for me, I'm quite confident that is something that's being well addressed and being well incorporated into the plan for the future and the way that we're bringing new technology on.
I
Hopefully that
propose
addresses
we
your question.
take
Sorry.
the other question as well, and then we allow Layla and Christian to answer the two together.
Good morning, Brian Ricketts from Eurocoal, a trade association representing the coal industry. I was going to talk about how China moves coal energy, but question to Mark and also to Christian. You described one technology, I think your company provides, maybe phase angle control. What other technologies is the association or grouping thinking about for the future? I'd be sort of interested to know. And what happened to Friends of the SuperGrid? That was a group
So,
here in Brussels.
oh, okay, Mark, yes, please go ahead. But then also I would like Layla to answer the question on technologies as well, if you'd like to. Well, first, Mark, please go ahead and then.
Well, thanks. Thanks. Sorry about that. No, so we represent several categories of technologies. So that would be some called like the grid enhancing technologies, which, well, we can talk about definitions, but there are digital hardware and software that can really increase the capacity of the existing grid in a very short time frame. So that's some technologies that would be dynamic line rating, advanced power flow control, like Mark is talking about. It could also be advanced sensors, or sensors that are measuring inertia or system security. These that can help to make improvements in the very short term. Then there's also more advanced forms of cable, like with a composite core that you could, in the same place where you have an existing line, you can put a new conductor, which could then also, in the space of a year, double the capacity. We have other members working on other kinds of technologies, like different kinds of cables that are innovative. And then lastly, we also have superconductors, and that's already quite mature at the distribution level. There are projects all over the world doing that, and that's where you can transport very high amounts of electricity with no resistance. And these are also kinds of cables that can bring huge benefit to the energy system. Yeah.
And what about converting AC lines to DC?
I don't think we have members that are working on that, but I'd let Mark take that one.
Yeah, I mean, obviously DC is a different form of transmission, but if we look at something like the superconducting cables, then they obviously can be used in a DC environment as well. So we do have members within the association, but there's a number of different categories within our membership. Certainly some of the software related things, so like we have topology optimization. They would be neutral to whether it be AC or DC. They just want to look and see what the circuits are out there, and therefore how can I move the energy around by changing the way that my network is configured. So we have a mix of AC and DC technological providers, if you like, that are there. Most of them will do both. But some are very much in the AC world. So like from my point of view, the advanced power flow control devices, for example, at least to date, the dynamic line rating would be very much focused on the AC networks. But we recognise that was that 18,000 kilometres, nearly half the plan was HVDC for the NSOE 10-year network development plan. So it's a big and growing area.
So, Christian, one question that has already been asked, what happened to the Friends of the SuperGrid? And the second question, how can we join the Friends of the SuperGrid?
So maybe just to you, Andreas, first about cyber. I think that creating a mesh grid, at least at the high level, is vital. At the moment, we're building, for instance, to offshore wind farms, we're building point-to-point connections, and they are vulnerable to that kind of attacks. So building a meshed super highway of grids provides resilience as well, but obviously it needs to be secured for cyber. So that's absolutely a part of creating a resilient energy infrastructure is about meshing at the very high transmission level, and you have technologies that are being developed like superconductors and other technologies that can provide some of that, and we hope to see measures and requirements also on that. In terms of, I think Friends of the SuperGrid was an initiative that was initiated 10 years ago or 13 years ago. It was initiated by Eddie O'Connor, who wrote this, and he was basically trying to get progressive TSOs on board on figuring out how to plan a supergrid. He was an impatient man, and I don't know when. I had nothing to do with the organization. I don't know what happened to it or where it is now, or if you can become a member. But I think what we'll hopefully get, if we get a decent governance structure, is also about getting transparency of data and also illustration of what such a grid would look like. I'll give you an example. There's a professor at University of Leuven, Dirk van Hertem. He has calculated that just to land the offshore power from the North Sea in Europe, you need 28 to 36 Ventilus project. The Ventilus project in Belgium is a 6 gigawatt overhead power line. And you need one of those every 19 kilometers between De Panne in Belgium to Lübeck in northern Germany, just to land the offshore. We won't be allowed to build a 6 gigawatt overhead power line every 19 kilometers between Belgium and northern Germany. And that's where those technologies such as superconductors are coming in. And as I understand it, Ilya is actually looking into superconductors for some of that distance of that Ventilus project. But in order to illustrate the challenge of this decarbonization, we need maps and plans. What will it look like? Also with existing technologies, because it won't be accepted, and that means there will be a cry also for innovation and providing technologies that can move much more high capacity currents. There's a company, Nexans, a big cable company in Europe. They are developing superconductors. You have NKT in Denmark as well. You also have companies developing next generation of superconductors. One is called Kjaer. It's in the United States. It's backed by Bill Gates. And you have an Irish company called Supernode that is developing the next generation of superconducting cables, which can basically increase the distance of the existing technology. But we don't see any innovation applied to those superconducting initiatives at the moment. They can't get funding from the Innovation Fund, etc. Now, this will not be addressed tomorrow. It's another difference to address. But that whole innovation agenda is extremely important if we want to create an internal market that can provide competitive energy prices and get us back in terms of competitiveness versus China and the United States, which I think is the whole motivation for starting this process in the first place.
Are there any questions online from those following and watching?
Yes, there is. We have a question from Marie Hayden, that is Managing Director of Grid Enhancing Technology Companies. And the question is, why do we need the regulation to require innovative technology be considered first? Isn't that something that should be, that grid planners should do anyway, in any case?
Okay, so the question is, shouldn't grid planners by default think of that, and so why does it need to be driven by regulation?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, I think anyone on the panel could probably answer that, but yes.
Okay, I'll start, and I'm sure other people will chip in if I don't get anything. It may be a slight misnomer. I mean, when I say innovative grid technologies first, and that's what we're seeing, what it is really saying we have an issue on the network, we have a need, we need to find a solution. The innovative grid technologies of which we speak are really looking to make the most of the existing assets that are already there. So when we talk about, and for what we've seen in the leaked documents, the focus seems to be on the basis of make the most of what you have, and you can use innovative technologies in order to do that. And that's why that stage, look at the innovative grid technologies first, maximize what you have on the grid, and then look to do something that's more invasive, I suppose, something that's going to be a bigger change to the network and involve a lot more time, energy, resources, etc. You can still use innovative grid technologies that we've already mentioned in those longer term or bigger projects or technologies. In actual fact, some of the membership that we represent would fall into that category. We've already mentioned things like superconductors and CPS cables and the like. They would probably be more in the we need to add a new circuit or line or another piece to the grid. So that may be a slight misunderstanding. So hopefully that's been clarified anyway.
Great. I'm wondering if there are any more questions to take. I mean, I think, we'd all love to ask you, what will you be looking for when the grids package comes out? But I think we can have that conversation as well informally. There are cookies, there's juice, water, and coffee here. So we can also, since we're quite a small crowd here in person, I think we can continue the exchange perhaps over coffee and tea and so on. So thank you all very much for joining us. Thanks for the contributions. Thanks to the speakers. This has been extremely interesting. Well, I guess we're all eagerly awaiting the proposals tomorrow. So stay tuned. Okay, have a nice day. Bye.